really use this opportunity to explore those fingers, because that's probably the hardest part, the hand grasping the scythe, is it? And something else. Again, there's a little bit of foreshortening here, so it's wide across the knuckles and narrows as it goes in towards his sleeve. This part where the fingers are curled round that handle of that gardening instrument, whatever it is, note, don't look very carefully when you're tracing it. If necessary, lift the tracing paper up and have a look at the photocopy underneath, but try and do it sort of accurately. I think, I found myself having to draw on my own understanding and knowledge of what happens when your fingers are curled round like that,
What massive feet he's got.
Yes, massive feet.
Well, I was going to talk about that.
I think they're clogs, actually.
They are clogs, and the clogs do emphasize the size of the feet being large-ish.
But they also wouldn't fit because they're made of wood.
Yes.
They wouldn't fit. They wouldn't actually fit the foot.
No, quite. They're much bigger than you would normally expect. Yeah, I mean, it comes down, that's along the knuckles, it curls round, and then it comes back on itself. These fingers are curling round the pole.
Yes.
Yeah.
But how?
Yeah. It's hard. I mean, even doing it with a pencil is hard.
Get that movement in the fingers.
Yeah, it's extraordinary. I mean, the whole drawing is really about movement, isn't it? You can feel him bending over and drawing that scythe back and swishing it through
it's so
the
physical.
core.
It's very physical.
Yes. I just want to point out something before you take the tracing paper off the paper. If you hold your pencil along the line of the top of his back here, where does it hit on his head?
Below it.
The top of his ear.
The top of his ear, exactly.
Not quite the top, but almost the top.
Well, yeah. Note that there is not much of his head above that line. Right? You see this little bit here? There's not much of it above my pencil.
Mm.
Now, I'm pointing this out now because getting the curvature from the top of his head across the middle of his shoulders, down his back, and through here is really important. That will give the feeling of this figure being bending over.
Yes.
Okay. Right. So you can take your tracing off now, and I'll show you why I asked you to do it, because it wasn't just an academic exercise. This afternoon, I did this one, first of all. I'm going to zoom out a tiny bit. It's not absolutely, I mean, what I found was, and this is an A3 piece of paper, I found myself enlarging the entire figure. Right, so this is the tracing, and look how much bigger I've gone. Okay. Now, that's one thing. I then thought, okay, I'm not entirely happy with the way his head is too high. I brought his head up too high. So I started again. But before we go even into this, I mean, I've gone this far with it, and I will draw with you once we get going. But before we do that, I'd like us all to pick up our charcoal. And if you've got a spare piece of, another piece of pastel paper or even white paper, it doesn't really matter. Can you have that on your board on top of your proper piece of paper just for a minute, and take the charcoal that you've got. Mine looks like this, right? And as I said to you, Gillian, it needs to be broken down into a manageable piece. I mean, some of my charcoal is about a little bit longer, but not much. They tend to break as you use them. But this is a manageable piece of charcoal. It's quite a good idea to have a spare piece of something, white paper or whatever, so that you can put it under your hand once you've got the drawing going, because what you don't want to do is to put your hand over your drawing and smudge it. And this stuff does smudge very easily. Anyway, first of all, I want you to see if you can do a line very well. First of all, get your charcoal so it contacts the paper and draw a line. Doesn't matter what sort of line it is, whether it's a curved line or a straight line. Now, in the course of copying this drawing, I discovered that I had to be extremely sensitive with the way I use the charcoal. So it depends on, which edge you pick up. If you can pick up another edge and draw a line like that. That's just by turning it slightly. Or you can do a line that's like that, depending again on how you contact the end of this charcoal with your paper. It's not like a pencil. It doesn't have a point on it in the same way. It's sort of got, well, several facets really. And the key to successful, I think, charcoal drawing is finding a way to express the marks with the piece of charcoal that you've got. And if you want to do a very light, pale, delicate line, you should be able to do so. Or if you want to do a more bold and robust mark, you should do that as well. So just try for a few minutes just to see what you can get out of this piece of charcoal. The other thing that you will, in the course of the copy, probably find you want to do is some sort of shading of some sort or tone, as is used across the back of the drawing here. There's, it looks like there's a half tone, and down here. Now, you don't need to go getting ink or anything else. You can do it all with the charcoal. So if I like to use my finger. I can smudge, I can put some tone on. I can then soften it with my finger like that. Or I can create tone by doing cross-hatching, which he also uses. So those are lines this isn't actually strictly cross-hatching. In his drawing, there are diagonal lines, a series of diagonal lines. And he's used that to express a change in plane on the figure, particularly on this part of the upper part of the torso here, and certainly down the inside edge of the arm here, and the back sleeve there, underneath here, and on the legs, trouser legs. Some of the lines are sort of quite, down this bottom left-hand leg, it's like he's used lines that go sort of like this, very quick, energetic lines, close together. And then he's introduced, further up, a really sort of chunky, strong, dark, short line. I mean, there's amazing energy in this drawing, in terms of the marks he's made and how he's explored the lights and darks across the figure. Right now, time is evaporating and I'm not keeping time. Yeah, okay. I think what we need to do is, once you've done a little bit of exploration with your charcoal and you've found out what it can and can't do, we'll then get on with the actual main drawing itself. I personally have got my drawing propped up so it's almost standing up in front of me so I can see it very clearly. Having it lying down next to you, I don't know that it's the best use of the actual drawing. Right, so we're going to start. I have got my piece of paper ready. I've already done a little bit of drawing on here, and I don't think that hurts. You can catch up with me in a minute. Make sure that you attach it to your paper so it doesn't move about, board rather. Only A4 paper. I would join two pieces together.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because what I'm trying to say is this is not a small medium charcoal.
Yeah. Okay.
And Van Gogh, these drawings he did were big. They weren't little on an A4. They weren't sketches on a little A4 piece of paper.
Where did you start drawing the figure from? Did you start with his torso or?
Right, good question. Well done for asking. I'd start with his head.
Okay.
Okay, but be careful. Remember, looking at the original, the angle of his head, it's not upright. It's 45 degrees, isn't it? About 45 degrees. So start when you, what I did when I started, I actually started with the back of the head with that, and I just went line by line, very slowly. Don't let yourself think, oh, well, the head is that shape. I looked at each line and saw how long it was and drew it. Then I went on to the next one. So I started with the back of the head here, and then I went on to this line that expresses the curvature of the skull. And then the little line that goes up to what is obviously his hat or something. And I drew that in, and so on. Yeah, I'm going to make mine a bit bigger so you can see. And as I say, if things don't work out, aren't quite right, you can just get your finger or your rubber, if you've got that nice little piece of rubber, and you just take it away. You don't have to rub very hard because charcoal is soft and very malleable. And then just work your way around the head. Be very careful about proportion. Just follow the lines he's drawn and keep relating across. Keep looking and thinking, what is the distance between, when you get to the back of the ear, between the back of the ear and the back of his head? What is the size of it? And you can take your charcoal and you can literally put it on the drawing and check it on the original, I mean. You can say to yourself, okay, that's about that much. And then I check it across mine. Yes, it's the same.
Presumably we're tracing down our traced image. Is that
No,
right?
you're not. Your tracing is a separate thing to have just to allow you to inform yourself about what's going on in the drawing. And at the end of it, or even halfway through, you could take your tracing and you could look at put your tracing over the drawing and see how close you're getting to the drawing. I mean, this is much better what I've done in the second drawing, but the arm is still slightly out, but I'm not going to worry about that too much. I'm just using it to check, you know, what I'm doing with the proportion of the whole thing. In order to check the proportion, say, from that back line to this line here, which is just behind his ear, I put my charcoal stick over it and I see that it's about that size. And then I compare it with what I've done on my drawing and I see that it's exactly the same. I've actually seen that space accurately. All right?
What space?
The space between the back of his head and that little line that comes up from his shoulder behind his ear. This is just to check the accuracy of the proportions, that's all. And if you've traced it down, then it's probably like, well, Prue's traced it down, hers should be absolutely accurate. But I'm not doing mine from a tracing, I'm copying it by eye. It's very good training to do that, to see how well you can actually observe space and shape and proportion.
Hi, Sue.
Good. Real pink. Right.